And good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. I am Chris Stirewalt, filling in for the Blake Berman, and this is The Hill on News Nation. And here's what we're tracking this hour. Less than a day until President Trump's deadline for Russia to end its bombardment of Ukraine. And the White House says a meeting between Trump and the Russian strongman could come as soon as next week.
Now it's going to be up to him. We're going to see what he has to say. It's going to be up to him. Very disappointed. They would like to meet with me, and I'll do whatever I can to stop the killing.
And it's Liberation Day all over again as hefty new tariffs go into place, with U.S. import taxes as high as 50%. We're watching the effects as they ripple through the economy. Also tonight, President Trump threatening to nationalize the D.C. Police Department after a member of his Doge team was the victim of an attempted carjacking. And the Texas redistricting story has gone coast to coast as Democratic lawmakers seek refuge in blue states and the FBI joins the hunt to bring them back to Austin. We'll talk live with one of those lawmakers in just a moment. But first, News Nation correspondent Joe Khalil joins us with the latest. Joe, my friend, what do you know?
So the Texas Republicans now, Chris, they're really doubling down on their threat to try to hold these Democrats accountable in some way. So we've confirmed with Senator John Cornyn. He says the FBI has accepted his request to help state law enforcement try to get these Democrats back in. Now, obviously, there are a lot of questions. They haven't broken federal law, so where does the FBI fit in? Jurisdictionally, that's going to be an issue. At the same time, Governor Greg Abbott says that he's not only going to try to bring them back to Texas, but may remove them from their seats. There may even be, he says, bribery charges if they accept fines, or if they accept donations, rather, to pay their own fines. Meantime, in Indiana, over the Midwest now, Vice President Vance is there. If there was any question whether or not the White House was behind this effort or driving it, he was trying to convince the governor, his former Senate colleague, Governor Braun, to do the same thing in Indiana. They've only got 9 seats, and right. 2 of them are Democrat only.
And they're well-drawn seats, right? Like Indiana prides itself on having fair and decent, and the vice president is there to tell them, get over the fair and decent stuff, get down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and when you look at the map, to your point, it's hard to see how they would break up at least one of those Democratic districts. And we've talked to Indiana Republicans. Many of them are hesitant about this. The governor actually only said 2 words. He said, "We listened." That was all he said about the meeting today. So whether they are on board, we will find out soon, we think, Chris.
Okay, Joe, we thank you for keeping track of this. Okay, Venton Jones is a Texas state representative who represents a Dallas district. And like the rest of his fellow Democrats, he fled the state to deny Republicans in Austin the quorum they need for a final vote on redistricting. He joins us now from Chicago, where many of his colleagues have found a sanctuary under the protection of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. We thank you so much for joining us today. I understand you don't want Republicans to do this, and Democrats coast to coast don't want them to do this. But the Constitution doesn't seem to forbid mid-decade redistricting, and it certainly has been done before in Texas. What's the rationale behind this degree of obstruction?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. And when we look at the maps, particularly the call that was sent by the governor to have our special session, not even a month ago, it was precipitated by the DOJ letter that was calling out 4 seats held by minority members. And so 3 African Americans and 1 Latino member. And through this process of redistricting, yes, that could happen. But when we look at the seats that were targeted, they were targeted by people of color, and they were targeted by seats that have been protected by the Voting Rights Act. And so that's why we started to raise the alarm around these seats and how they're being created, not just from the racial perspective, but also as someone who represents Dallas, I have 3 congressional districts that overlay with House District 100 that are now going to be, excuse me, that are now going to be stretched into rural communities. So that completely alters representation for constituents in my area.
Okay. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton, he's got a Senate race he's running, and he is cranking up the pressure here. He's threatening criminal prosecutions for your donors, and maybe that he could charge those in self-imposed exile like yourself with bribery charges and all this stuff. Is there actual legal exposure here for you or for your supporters?
No, we're not seeing any legal exposure at this time. But I think it's important to note the fear and intimidation that's happening, and that the governor and lieutenant governor are using. It kind of harkens back to the civil rights era and the Voting Rights Act, and what had to happen: bomb threats, threats on people's lives, threats on people's livelihoods, and all that stuff happening now. So I am confident that me and my colleagues are within the law, and we will continue to fight for our constituents who we were sent there to represent, not the governor and not the president of the United States.
Okay, let's say you can stay on the lam for another couple of weeks and the special session that you referenced ends. Greg Abbott can call another special session, right? He can keep calling special sessions. Where does this all end? How does this end?
I think we have to take this one day at a time right now. And it's already an intense process. Just yesterday, we had a bomb threat at our location and had to deal with that. And so we're already seeing the violence that is being echoed by lawmakers who say, come and get them. And so this is just really one day at a time. But what I know now is that we are committed to staying out of this for this special session, and will continue to regroup and hope that the governor and Republicans really come to their senses, because this is not something that's just going to impact Texas. It's going to start a domino effect across this nation that we just don't want to see. And so hopefully we will continue to pull this off the docket. And if we really wanted to have this conversation about redistricting, we would have done it during the regular session that had 140 days and plenty of opportunities to engage communities. But the redistricting committee didn't even meet once.
I have to ask you this before I let you go. You know, the FBI has joined the hunt for you guys and is helping Texas. But you mentioned the bomb threats. Normally, you'd be calling the FBI when you have elected officials who are targeted for threats of political violence. Are you talking to the FBI about the threats to your security? How does that all work?
Well, our security is definitely being coordinated. I don't want to get into too much detail right now, just because of the events that are taking place. But we're definitely working with law enforcement to make sure that everyone is safe and have the ability to execute the roles that they were elected to do in a safe way without being threatened by these tactics that the administration is choosing to engage in at this time.
Okay. All right, America, if you'd ever eaten fried butter at the State Fair of Texas, that's right there in his district, and you would know him already, but if you don't, there he is, Representative Venton Jones. We thank you. So
thank you for having me today.
So what can the FBI do to help Texas Republicans, and what's off limits? Where's the line? Joining us now, Tracy Walder. She is a former FBI special agent. She is also NewsNation's national security contributor, and we're very grateful to have you today. Are we going to see FBI agents handcuffing Democratic lawmakers and taking them back to Texas? What's going to happen here?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I actually live in Texas, so this is really interesting, obviously, for me to see this unfold. No, the FBI actually cannot arrest any of these individuals because right now there's no legal breach of federal law. So they can assist if asked to, and my guess is they are assisting in terms of locating them at this point, but they cannot arrest them. There are no criminal warrants, rather there's civil warrants actually out for them. So the FBI would not have any power to execute any kind of arrest.
But if the United States Department of Justice came up with a charge for bribery or something, and the Attorney General said, we want to talk to these people about a violation like that, then the score changes.
Of course, you're absolutely right. I'm just speaking, to what we have right now at this moment. But I do know you're right. Governor Abbott has actually talked about the fact, and part of what I think he's using as this impetus, right, to go out and look for them, is this idea that they actually, some of them, he thinks, accepted funds to be able to leave the state and be in the other states that they have gone to and be in these hotels. So he is insinuating that that is potentially bribery and a second-degree felony, which if they're charged with that, then theoretically the FBI could come in and arrest them. You're right.
Okay. So what happens if these Democratic governors, so we heard J.B. Pritzker, we heard Maura Healey in Massachusetts and others basically saying we're a sanctuary state for these folks and we're going to protect them and not let Texas come and get them. Does the FBI, do the feds get sucked in that way? Is there some sort of jurisdictional clash that occurs between the two states that the feds have to adjudicate?
That's an interesting question. I'm actually not 100% sure. Obviously, this is a bit unprecedented for the FBI to even be brought in, to be completely honest with you. They're not typically brought in something like this. So, yes, it could become more of a federal issue, right? Because you have people then transiting state lines and potentially committing a crime, which then obviously that does escalate to the FBI. Now, in terms of holding those governors accountable, like Pritzker and others, I'm not sure that the FBI would be able to get involved in that.
Tracy Walter, you are a help to us, and we thank you for it. Enjoy Texas. Coming up, as President Trump's Friday ceasefire deadline looms, the White House dangles possible direct in-person talks between Trump and Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Zelensky, maybe. We have a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee to discuss. Plus, Trump's sprawling tariffs go into effect. What's next? And this.
Somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C.
So can the president seize control of the Washington, D.C. Police Department? We'll discuss that when The Hill returns. Welcome back to The Hill on NewsNation. I'm Chris Stirewalt, in for Blake Berman. A meeting between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin could happen as soon as next week. President Trump asked about the ceasefire deadline and the meeting just a short time ago.
It's going to be up to him. We're going to see what he has to say. It's going to be up to him. Very disappointed. They would like to meet with me, and I'll do whatever I can to stop the killing.
A Russian official also confirming the Putin-Trump summit, saying, quote, preparations are ongoing. This can be a historic meeting. Dialogue will prevail. Okay. Joining us now is Republican Congressman from Georgia, Rich McCormick. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. And thanks for making time for us today, Congressman. Vladimir Putin has a history of using negotiations to buy time. He knows the longer he can keep up his assault on Ukraine, the better the outcome for Russia will be. Look at this graph. This blew my mind today. This shows the intensification of Russian bombardment since the Trump peace process began. You just see how the number of drone strikes has gone up and up and up. Is there a danger here that Putin is just working the refs?
Oh, of course there is. I remember when this happened with Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we gave them a deadline. What they did was basically turn up the intensity of purging an entire race. So that's always a problem with deadlines. The nice thing is Trump's onto them. He literally recognized that they're stalling, shortened the deadline dramatically, and said, hey, look, you run out of this deadline, you're going to be sorry. And look what's happened. Russia is now coming to the table. They're already predicting huge success in peace talks. That means they understand that the time is over, that Trump's out of patience, he's tired of the stalling, and he wants to have something come to a conclusion. What he needs to realize, Russia has probably they rank 11th in GDPs in the world. They probably have a smaller GDP than 4 states in the United States, although they're 10 times the size of the GDP of Ukraine and 5 times in population. If we gang up on them with Europe, you're talking about a $50 trillion GDP compared to 2. We should be dominating these guys. We make it harder on them with sanctions, and their life will be very miserable. So they have a lot to consider as they come to the table.
But what Russia does have is a lot of natural resources. They do have a lot of energy, and the president is targeting that with sanctions on India for buying Russian oil and all of that. And you're very right, but some of that cost will be felt by American consumers, right? So if the president does go for this maximum economic pain, it would necessarily drive up fuel prices for American consumers. Is that a price we should be willing to pay?
Well, first of all, realizing doing the right thing, what is the price we should do to do the right thing? And I think it's going to hurt India and Europe a lot more than it hurt us. We can be energy independent very easily by just turning up production. We have more natural resources than all those other countries. We don't need their natural resources. So quite frankly, this is up to the rest of the world to do the right thing on their part, to not consume oil that funds this war. When you talk about natural resources, Ukraine has a ton of natural resources. They're top 5 in resources internationally. They have cobalt, lithium, uranium, steel, you name it. And they're very important to the future of the world when it comes to resources that otherwise would be afforded for North Korea, Iran, and China. Pick your enemies and pick your friends very carefully.
All right, Congressman, we have to let you go, but I have to know, what field is that behind you? Where are you?
So we're down at the biggest job fair in the nation right now. It's in Texas, Dallas, Texas. We're going to emulate this in Atlanta. We want to do the same thing, create a lot of jobs, have a ton of businesses. I think there's over 500 businesses here today with about 40,000 people visiting. It's a great marketing. I want to emulate the best. Representative Van Dyne is doing a great job fair down here. We want to do the same thing in Atlanta.
Don't let your constituents catch you rooting against the Braves. Okay.
Never. Not a chance.
If you'd ever been to Flowery Branch, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Congressman Rich McCormick. We thank you. All right, there is still much, much more ahead on the Hill. Is turnabout fair play? Republicans are targeting big banks for refusing MAGA-friendly customers. Can they do that? And the administration is trying to get on the same page when it comes to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. But new questions about favorable treatment for his former partner in crime are lingering. That's all next when the Hill returns. Welcome back to the Hill. I'm Chris Stirewalt, in for Blake Berman. After months of false starts and delayed deadlines, today saw sweeping new tariffs on imported goods from around the world. President Trump kicked things off by touting the revenue collected, saying, quote, "It's midnight. Billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the United States of America." Since February, President Trump's full month in office, the U.S. has collected more than $100 billion in tariffs through July. Almost 90% of that came from April onward, when the president initially made his Liberation Day tariff announcement. Our own Kelly Meyer is live at the White House with what's going on today. Kelly, what do you know?
Hey there, Chris. So President Trump's Commerce Secretary today saying he expects the country is heading towards $50 billion in tariff revenue per month. But big businesses like McDonald's aren't loving the impact the tariffs are having on customers. So here's how the White House sees it. The whole goal here is to rebalance trade. The president feels the U.S. was getting ripped off. He put on the tariffs on imports and says if you make it here, you won't be taxed. And then let's bring in some money here. But President Trump's economic advisor, Stephen Moore, didn't talk about tariffs, but presented new jobs report data saying President Trump fudged the numbers by more than 1 million.
This shows that over the last 2 years of the Biden administration, the BLS overestimated job creation by 1.5 million jobs. Mr. President, that's a gigantic error. And I don't know if she's, I'm not
Might
making
not have been an error. That's the bad part. If it was an error, it would be one thing. I don't think it's an error. I think they did it purposely.
So that was President Trump a short time ago in the Oval Office. Now, we said how the White House feels about this, but for economists and some businesses, they are already feeling the crunch. Prices are going up on everything from coffee to cars to clothes. But the president says the door isn't closed just yet for countries to make a deal. The president says he is always open to negotiating for a compelling offer. Chris.
Oh, okay, Kelly, I saw what you did there with I'm loving it. I saw what you did there. Kelly, we thank you. Okay, here now, Republican Florida Congressman Mike Herodopoulos. He's a member of the Financial Services Committee and knows something about all this. Congressman, I want to refer you back to that chart on tax collections. The president is talking about the billions of dollars coming into the country, but those are taxes that are overwhelmingly paid by Americans, importers, distributors, retailers. They're going to eat some of the costs, but that's all money leaving the private sector and going to the government, right?
Well, again, that's the challenge we have right now is the president has been very successful in cutting deals with the EU, Japan, and other nations. There's a lot of progress being made with China. But the bottom line is short-term pain, so to speak, for long-term gain. As you know better than I, Chris, over the last 20 years, we've been shortchanged on trade deals. They're charging us much higher tariff rates or tax rates than we charge them. And the president finally said enough is enough. We're the biggest economy in the world. We're the most generous nation in the world. And you need to treat us as a fair trading partner. That's what fair trade is, a level playing field. For years, it's been an unlevel playing field. And he's going to make those folks pay the price until they play fairly with the United States of America.
And your goal would be to reduce friction for trade generally, that these tariffs should be used to punish other countries that are being unfair to us with the goal of pushing things down so that you have a freer, fairer trade.
Exactly. Look, I'm a big believer in essence, no taxes, right? No taxes is good. It means the true competitor, the best product wins. What has been happening for years, whether it be on European cars or other items, we charge a much lower tax rate than they get charged. And so we've simply said, give us a level playing field, whatever that number is, whether it be 0 or 15, and we'll go out and compete. But we're not going to have a fair competition if they're charging us 10% on cars and we only charge them 2.5% on cars. And so the president's playing hardball. I don't like this short term. No one does. But long term, this is a win for American workers and, more importantly, consumers, because they're going to get a better product at a better price when there's a level, fair trading partner.
Okay, we have some news today that President Trump has his pick for a vacancy on the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. He was on this very show earlier this summer. Let's listen to what Stephen Miran had to say.
I guess this gets to the concept of the idea of sort of a shadow Fed president signaling, listen to them and not Powell, and whether the president believes that should happen.
Look, I think that the president is very much entitled to views on monetary policy, just as everyone is, and he's made it very clear what he thinks should happen.
Okay, I assume that the president picked Miran because he's a dove and will vote for rate cuts. But we are definitely seeing prices climbing, and there are some worrisome indications on inflation that we were alluding to before. Do you have any concerns right now about overheating the economy, that if the Fed comes in with a cut right now, that it could tip us into real trouble?
Well, I think we're going to have, first of all, a long-term winning strategy with tariffs, out some of that pressure down. But Powell, in front of my own committee, said he made a mistake with interest rates by not raising them quick enough. And of course, Biden made a mistake with spending too much. We need to have a growing economy. The big, beautiful bill is really going to help with the tax reduction for businesses. But remember, what goal we have right now is to grow the economy. We had a 3% quarter, and that's before the tax cuts. I think we're going to have strong growth, and we need to reduce interest rates. And it's not a radical concept, because they're doing it in Japan, they're doing it in the EU, the UK. All major nations are cutting interest rates right now because they know that the consumer deserves a break. I think that as you saw just last week, there was a split with the Fed. They said that, hey, a couple of governors said we should be reducing rates. And when we only got that jobs report back, it shows we should probably reduce rates to help folks out. And so the president's on the right track. I think the Fed should follow what other nations are doing, reducing the cost for consumers, because that's the biggest issue we're all facing after 4 years of higher prices.
Okay, if you had ever watched the beauty of a launch at Cape Canaveral, you would know him already, America. But if you haven't, there he is, Congressman Mike Herodopoulos. We thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Great to see you again.
You bet. The president also signed an executive order today that aims to prevent banks from debanking conservatives. The move comes after the president accused the Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase of discriminating against him and others.
I had hundreds of millions. I had many, many accounts loaded up with cash. I was loaded up with cash, and they told me, I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out. They totally discriminate against, I think me maybe even more, but they discriminate against many conservatives.
With us now, former senior advisor to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. She's Linda Tran, and former White House Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration is Mick Mulvaney, joining us from Charlotte. Okay, Mick, what is going? So this sounds like vendetta from the president, that he's going to punish these people because they wouldn't do business with him after January 6th and the whole 2020 business. But is there something more, something deeper here?
There is. I know that folks on the left are going to say it's revenge, and folks on the right are going to say, yay, he's owning the left and so forth. But I'm glad he's doing it, because it's drawing attention to something that's real. And the banks have admitted that it's real, that the Biden administration, the regulators, went to many of the financial institutions in this country and said, look, there's something in the law called reputational risk. And what we're telling you is, if you bank certain high-profile conservatives, Republicans, anybody associated with January 6th, that's going to put reputational risk into play in our oversight of you. Do you really want to bank these people and face our higher oversight, or do you just want to walk away? And the banks admit they walked away. The New York Post reported that yesterday after the president's interview. A lot of the banks said, yeah, we did this because we were following the direction of the Democrat regulators in the Biden administration. So, look, it happens to Trump. That's fine. He's a wealthy guy. He can get over it. I don't happen to a lot of people who don't have a lot of money, who couldn't get jobs, who couldn't get bank accounts because they were associated with the Trump administration. It's real, and I'm glad the president is at least trying to shed a little bit of light on it. Okay, so, Linda, this goes beyond just the January 6th and the Trump stuff. This is also environmental restrictions, gun makers or gun sellers, people who are engaged in practices. And you could say, well, you know, the banks can do business with whoever the banks want to do business with. But is Mick pointing at something here where the pressure on these institutions that came from the administration and sort of the left generally, that this is now time for payback?
Well, first of all, we should be clear that these policies have existed all the way back through the Obama administration and the first Trump administration. Yeah. And in part, some of the constraints were around banking for industries that had cash economies, essentially. Right. So this has been around for a very long time. But let's not pretend that this is happening in a vacuum. This is coming on the heels of some significant pressure from the cryptocurrency industry in particular. And, you know, there's a whole laundry list of major donors to now President Trump, who gave between $1 million to $5 million for inauguration, who are now going to be the happy recipients of maybe better banking practices for them.
Oh, Mick, what say you to that? Crypto bros, big win?
Look, is it really the government's business? If you're doing something legal, this is what drove me nuts when I ran the CFPB. I got there and found out that my predecessor, the Democrat director, was sending letters to people saying, look, we know what you're doing is legal, but we really don't like it. And since we don't like it, we're going to subject you to a higher level of scrutiny. Is that the kind of government that we really want? That's a shakedown kind of government. It's, you know, oh, my goodness gracious, this is a beautiful place you've got here. It'd be a shame should it burn down.
But isn't that what this administration's doing to other people now? Like, isn't that like the treadmill that we're on?
Yeah, maybe it is. And, you know, I wish we'd get off the treadmill, but we're not going to get off the treadmill till more people know that it happened. A lot of people refuse to even admit that it's possible that we would debank gun manufacturers, that you would debank pawn shops. I'm not making that up. We had congressional hearings. It was called Operation Choke Point. It's a real thing. And for some reason, it didn't register with a lot of people. So, look, the more attention we get to it, the better. I'm with you. We get off the treadmill eventually, but that's not going to happen until everybody acknowledges, number one, that it happens, and number two, that it's wrong.
We're going to let Linda have the last word on this, but after we let you go, because Linda's going to be back for the panel later. We're going to let her beat you up after you're gone, Mick. But Mick, we appreciate your time, and Linda, we're going to see you in a few minutes. Okay, coming up, Donald Trump takes on the District of Columbia.
And either they're going to straighten their act out in terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize. And
is the commander-in-chief about to become Washington, D.C.'s top cop? The full panel is next.
NewsNation has not left the border. NewsNation has stayed boots on the ground since this crisis started.
And also NewsNation's Allie Bradley.
Allie's a great reporter. Hats off to her.
If you really want to know what's happening at our southern border, you have to live it every single day.
I have to say that somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Okay, now this is not the first time that President Trump has hinted at taking over a city, this one in particular, but can he do it? The full panel is with us now. Niall Stanton, she's White House columnist for The Hill. Linda Tran, former senior advisor to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Ian Swanson, my editor, be nice to him, managing editor for The Hill. And Aaron McGuire, Republican strategist, and so much more. Okay, now we start with you. Can the president take over the police department for the District of Columbia?
Yes, temporarily. Okay. That is one of the things that he can do. And he can also dispatch the National Guard into the District of Columbia. What he can't do, or what would be difficult for him to do, is this idea of full federalization. Yeah. In order to do that, you would need to repeal the Home Rule Act of 1973, and you would need a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate to do that, which he doesn't have.
It seems unlikely to take place. Okay, speaking of the Justice Department, Aaron, J.D. Vance, there was a meeting, there wasn't a meeting, it was on again, it was off again, but there's clearly been a huddle session inside the administration J.D. Vance was part of to try to figure out where to go from here on Jeffrey Epstein. We had James Comer in the House say this week, we're going to subpoena everyone. We're going to subpoena Bill Clinton. We're going to do everything. We're going to spread it around. Is the administration at some point going to be able to get off the dime on this thing? Does it move on from here, or does it just fester?
It'll fester for a while because this is something that the MAGA base, the president's base, is very ginned up on. But I will say this to the MAGA base and to Republicans writ large. The MAGA base wants indictments. They want prosecution. They want justice. They want jail. I would caution them. We need to not be demanding outcomes. We need to be demanding facts. We should ask for a full, thorough, transparent investigation. And if that investigation leads to indictments and charges and criminal convictions, absolutely. But demanding an outcome in the justice system is everything Republicans have fought against time and again to make sure that the judiciary is not weaponized. So I very much am of team, yes, investigations, full transparency, but demanding outcomes does not work.
Okay, Linda, another thing the president is trying to do today is
so many things.
So many things, right?
Can't keep up.
It's just Thursday. So the president says that he's going to, and this is something he tried to do in 2020, is change the census so that the census does not include people in the United States illegally. Now, courts ruled in 2020 and said, no, that's not what the Constitution says. Constitution says persons. It doesn't say citizens. This strikes me, though, as an effort to help this redistricting deal. Is that what's going on here? How do you interpret that?
Well, I mean, I think all of it is cut from the same cloth. It is an effort to rewrite the rules so that he gets to choose who it is that's voting.
Because people who are in the United States illegally are disproportionately in Democratic districts.
Well, that's what
that's the president's assumption.
Exactly. That may or may not be true. But the point here is that he has the power, he's got the gavel, and he's trying his darndest to reset the table, rewrite the rules so that he has the best advantage. And clearly he thinks that doing this would give him an advantage heading into 2026.
Now, he's thinking about midterms a lot, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only because of the importance of those to his legislative agenda, but as a referendum on him. He doesn't want the Republicans to take a drubbing in the midterms because it would obviously be seen as a verdict on the first 2 years.
No one
of his
should be allowed
term.
to say drubbing except for you. Your dialect demands only you should be allowed to say drubbing. Okay, Ian, there is a new staffer at the Department of Justice. His name is Jared Wise. Here's a little video that was unearthed about Mr. Wise.
You're disgusting, man. You guys are disgusting. I'm former law enforcement. You're disgusting. You are the Nazi. You are the Gestapo. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Now, this is a guy who now has a sweet gig at the United States Department of Justice. He acknowledged that he had been there and may have said things, but now there's video that's come out. I assume, though, that for the problem that Aaron talked to about the problems with the MAGA base, this stuff kind of helps Trump with his MAGA base, right? You put more J6ers and more stuff like that in the government, the more in your face they are, probably it helps him quiet some of that down.
I guess maybe. I always have a little bit of a problem understanding when someone's saying those kinds of things about any kind of police force.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like a lot of Americans are kind of naturally offended by that. January 6th is kind of dug in on certain lines in terms of how we all see it. So I take your point, but I don't know. I mean, if your average Americans see that video, I don't know that they're likely to love this guy or think that he should be at DOJ.
Aaron, in his first term, the District of Columbia had a very hostile relationship with the president, and it was vice versa, the Black Lives Matter Plaza, all that stuff. This time around, Muriel Bowser, the mayor, wants a new football stadium. Yes. And boy, has she changed her tune about Donald Trump. This woman went from leader of the resistance to buddy of the president.
Economic investment can move mountains.
That's right. So what's she going to do about all this D.C. Trump crackdown? She's got to get results, or what happens?
I don't know what happens, but to be fair, being in D.C. at night, I don't feel safe. In Navy Yard, almost every weekend, you see mobs of kids running around, shutting down neighborhoods. This actually does happen. Looting, shooting. We saw an Uber Eats driver just a couple years ago thrown out of his vehicle in a carjacking right at this baseball stadium down here. There is a real crime problem and a real danger problem in this city. Muriel Bowser would be best to step up and fix it herself, but if she can't and there is support offered legally by the federal government and it makes the city safer, I'm all for it.
But why do Democrats hate public safety? Like,
yeah, I know. Why do you want Democrats to let the moms clearly do win? not hate public safety, and this is clearly not a new argument from the GOP. But if you look at the numbers, crime is actually down in D.C. 26% since last year, and that was down 35%.
But
the perception for people in this city is that it is wildly because you see.
I'm not cutting Linda off again. I'm not cutting Linda off again. I did it to her before. I know, but now you're paying the price for me. Panel, thank you all so much. We appreciate you very much. Coming up, how secure is America's crucial GPS system? What's the backup plan if it ever happened to come under attack? Brian Enton will join us live with the answer to that. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, News Nation has sat down with one of the victims of that vicious Cincinnati brawl. She goes by the name Holly and talked to us in a secret location. Elizabeth will bring us the interview at 7 p.m. Eastern. Stick around. Welcome back to The Hill, and why don't we get you caught up on the stories that are hot right now at thehill.com, starting with the Trump administration fires ex-acting FBI director seen as champion of rank-and-file staff. Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau, refused to turn over a list of agents who had worked on January 6 cases. Also trending today, Trump orders Commerce Department to begin work on new census. We talked about that in a recent social media post. He demanded the department redo the census and exclude those who are in the country illegally. This is the fight over redistricting grows. And finally, judge temporarily suspends Alligator Alcatraz construction. A federal judge put a halt to the construction of that big prison camp in Florida. Immigration authorities can still detain migrants at the facility, but this prevents new construction in the wake of complaints about, of all things, environmental violations. So to check out these stories and so much more, just scan the QR code on your screen or visit thehill.com. I bet you already do, because it's pretty good. America's GPS satellites assist everything from our power grids to internet and cell phones. But how prepared would the United States be for a nationwide attack on this critical system? Good question. Our senior national correspondent, Brian Enton, has been closely following this story and what's being done to fight the threat. He joins us now live from a beautiful part of the world, Lexington, Kentucky. Brian, hello.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, it is beautiful here. You know, we've been digging into this for the last couple of months. GPS, it controls so many parts of our life. You mentioned the power grid, but also banking when you go to the ATM, not just the GPS in your car, but GPS in commercial aircraft, defense systems. And we've learned that the system is vulnerable, which is why the United States government is looking into backups, specifically when it comes to ground-based backups that do not involve satellites.
There's something wrong with the TV. It's all messed up.
It is the storyline of a terrifying movie.
I think that ship is heading towards us.
Cyber terrorists attack, and our GPS network is crippled.
FAA just issued a critical alert. The entire network went down.
But film fiction is eerily close to frightening fact. The possibility is real, especially here in America.
My access has been blocked.
I think the biggest threat with GPS right now is that it's being taken for granted.
Admiral Thad Allen has chaired the U.S. Advisory Board on Position, Navigation, and Timing. He says movie makers are not too far off the mark about the coast-to-coast chaos of a GPS blackout.
It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's become a public utility, and I'm not sure we really understand the reach of it. It's like you really don't understand oxygen until you don't have any.
Something as simple as a solar flare could take down the network. So too could a hostile nation. The House Intelligence Committee warning last year that Russia is developing a nuclear anti-satellite weapon. And while Russia and China have ground-based backups for GPS, the United States does not.
I don't think it's well understood exactly the breadth and the scope of the penetration of GPS into our daily life and what would happen if it wasn't there anymore.
The solution to this very real doomsday scenario could actually already be standing tall in the sky in communities from coast to coast.
This is a tower site, and the transmitter, the main piece of gear that takes the signal and amplifies it and sends it up the tower.
Broadcast television towers. There's nearly 1,500 of them nationwide, many equipped with new technology called ATSC 3.0 that can transmit a signal very similar to GPS. It's called BPS, Broadcast Positioning System, a potential backup if GPS goes out.
It is kind of amazing to think these sort of old school TV towers could end up saving the day.
Yeah, look, it's very opportunistic. We realize that we have this, we have this equipment. It's exactly what it's used for, right? It's used to disseminate signals out to everyone simultaneously. So it's all installed, it's ready to go. We can turn this thing on.
So this is really the core right here?
Next, our media chief technology and digital officer, Brett Jenkins, showed us the new tech.
And we've proven actually that within a few billionths of a second, we are just as accurate as the satellite-based system.
Next, our owns NewsNation and 200 local TV stations with broadcast towers all over the country.
Okay.
With help from Congress, these towers could be the answer to a doomsday GPS blackout. The new ground technology, in many ways, harder for our adversaries to take out.
A terrestrial signal, a signal that sort of comes from the ground off the tower, is really, really hard to, from a security standpoint, to mess around with.
And those towers really are all over the country, in rural America, in cities. BPS, the Broadcast Positioning System, it would be a viable ground-based option. Now, Chris, it's really up to the U.S. government, to Congress, to figure out which plan they're going to move forward with. But it's clear when you look into this, it's frightening. There is no backup in the United States for GPS right now. Chris?
Okay. All right, Brian, have a good time down in Kentucky. We thank you, and we thank you all for watching The Hill here on News Nation. We're back tomorrow, just as we should be, at 6 p.m. Eastern. And Elizabeth Vargas Report starts right now.